Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the intellectual foundations of second-wave feminism. We're going to explore a completely revolutionary idea that came out of this era. The concept that our most private, everyday lives are actually shaped by massive, overarching public systems. Let's dive right in. To kick things off, consider this. Can a personal problem actually be a political one? We're exploring how a really profound shift in perspective during the 1960s and 70s transformed everyday domestic issues, things people previously thought of as totally private matters, into massive, systemic political debates. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the core concept of the personal being political, break down the three main feminist branches, look at consciousness raising, examine the dialectic of sex, and wrap up with the movement's enduring legacy. Part 1. The personal is political. This is the foundational concept that sparked a total paradigm shift across multiple social movements. Activist Carol Hanisch famously stated, "Women are messed over, not messed up." In a 1969 memo, she laid out this groundbreaking theory. She argued that women's private struggles, like who's doing the dishes or just general feelings of dissatisfaction at home, well, those weren't individual psychological failures. They weren't neuroses. Instead, they were the direct results of an oppressive social system. See, at the time, critics were totally dismissing women's consciousness-raising groups. They called it just navel-gazing or personal therapy, but Hanisch fiercely pushed back on that. She posited that understanding shared private struggles is actually a crucial form of collective political action. By realizing these issues were shared by literally millions of women, the focus completely shifted. It moved away from self-blame and individual therapy and pivoted straight toward fighting for systemic political solutions. Moving on to Part 2, the three feminist branches. So with the private sphere now officially recognized as a political arena, different ideological branches started to emerge. The oldest of these is liberal feminism, often called mainstream feminism. This branch sought to integrate women right into the mainstream public sphere. They wanted equality achieved through legal and political reform, but entirely within the framework of existing liberal democracy. Think of things like expanding access to education, fighting for equal pay, and really pushing for the Equal Rights Amendment. The idea was that women wanted the exact same things as men: a good education, a decent living, and the ability to provide for their families. Academic analyses of the movement highlight that this mainstream approach fundamentally relied on the state. Liberal feminists viewed the government as the ultimate protector of individual rights. They basically wanted to work within the existing structure of society to fix the system from the inside out. But as you might guess, not everyone agreed the current system was simply fixable. Radical feminism argued that our existing political and social organization was inherently tied to patriarchy. To them, you couldn't just pass a law to fix things because male supremacy was baked into the very roots of society, especially in private relationships. Their goal? A radical reordering of society. They wanted to get to the absolute root of the problem and completely dismantle patriarchal structures. And then we have socialist feminism. This branch emerged to argue that you simply cannot address gender inequality without simultaneously restructuring the capitalist economic system that relies on it. They viewed class and gender as symbiotically linked. Much like Marxism, they recognized the oppressive structure of capitalism, but unlike strict Marxists, they insisted that recognizing sex discrimination was just as vital as recognizing class struggle. Ultimately, these three branches diagnosed the exact same problem, the oppression of women, but they proposed totally different structural solutions. Liberal feminists wanted legal reform. Radical feminists aimed to dismantle the patriarchy completely, and socialist feminists demanded sweeping economic restructuring. Which brings us to Part 3, consciousness raising and action. So how did these high-level theories actually translate into actionable strategies? Well, in consciousness-raising groups, a major debate sparked between the pro-woman line and traditional sex role theory. Sex role theory basically suggested women acted submissively because society brainwashed them to do so. But the pro-woman line completely challenged this. They argued that women act a certain way out of sheer necessity for survival under male supremacy. Playing dumb or giggling, those weren't signs of brainwashing. They were survival tactics. This successfully shifted the focus away from blaming women for their behavior and moved it toward a larger class struggle against male dominance. Radical feminists took these theories and pushed boundaries in the private sphere to create tangible action. Because they viewed the personal as political, they actively evaluated traditional institutions like marriage and motherhood. And more critically, their focus on women as victims of systemic abuse led to the establishment of really vital resources. We're talking about the very first rape crisis centers and refuges for domestic abuse survivors. Things moved incredibly fast during this period. The late 1960s saw a rapid progression. It went from organizing theatrical protests against beauty standards at the Miss America pageant in '68 to writing foundational political memos in '69 to publishing massive, comprehensive theories by 1970. Let's look closer at that last one in part 4, the dialectic of sex. To truly understand the extreme bounds of radical theory during this time, we have to examine a highly controversial text. In 1970, Shulamith Firestone published The Dialectic of Sex, which was quickly dubbed the Little Red Book for Women. What's so fascinating here is her method. Firestone attempted to trace sexual oppression back to biological origins in the animal kingdom, entirely rejecting the idea that oppression was purely historical or economic. To pull this off, she ambitiously fused Marxist dialectical methods with Freudian psychoanalysis. Pushing theory to its absolute limits, Firestone argued that because oppression was rooted in the biology of reproduction, true liberation actually required artificial reproduction technology. She proposed that society needed to achieve a sort of cybernetic communism, where machines could bear children. The idea was that this would free women from the physical realities of childbirth and effectively destroy the patriarchal family structure forever. Furthermore, she controversially theorized about the oppression of children. She argued that childhood itself was not a natural state, but a modern capitalist invention. According to her text, the concept of a happy childhood was essentially designed to instill discipline in future factory workers, while simultaneously keeping women tied to the home as caregivers. Finally, Part 5, an enduring feminist legacy. Decades after these intense debates, how do these frameworks shape our world? Well, the foundational concept that the personal is political directly led to sweeping policy changes worldwide. By dragging private domestic issues out into the public legal arena, second-wave feminism paved the way for monumental shifts. We're talking about the legalization of abortion, widespread access to contraception, the crucial criminalization of marital rape, and vital revisions to property acts. And today, we see this philosophy alive and well in our digital spaces. Hashtag movements like Me Too utilize this exact same theoretical framework. They transform intimate, highly personal narratives of assault and harassment into massive, collective public discourse. And as we've seen, that sparks real-world political action and legal reckoning. Of course, the movement continues to evolve. Early second-wave movements faced entirely valid criticisms, like oversimplifying complex gender dynamics or primarily focusing on middle-class experiences while initially excluding women of color. However, as intersectional theory has expanded the movement, the core framework that our private realities are governed by public systems remains absolutely central to modern sociology. Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. As you reflect on the ideas in this explainer, ask yourself, in our hyper-connected digital age, where every personal choice, struggle, and experience can now be broadcast globally online, what does it truly mean for the personal to be political today? Have we erased the boundary entirely? Thanks for exploring this fascinating topic with me. Keep questioning and keep learning.